Okay, I think I'm live there now. So, thanks for showing up, if you've showed up. If you have, you might drop a comment there in the box just to confirm that you can actually hear me and see me okay. I think you can, but I want to be just sure. If you can hear me and see me, I would appreciate it if you drop a comment in the box. And I think I am live. And if you have any questions to do with Irish law or property or employment law, anything of that nature, business, etc., I'd be happy enough to try and deal with it. I don't see any questions there yet. I'm sure there will be. I would like to point out at the outset, okay, good stuff, you can hear me okay. Hello Ireland, hello in Zendo AD, thanks for coming along. You can hear me and see me okay, that's good. If you have any questions then fire away, I'll do my best to answer them. I would make it clear though at the outset that I'm not giving legal advice. I will give as much information as I can on any particular topic, but everything that I say has to come with a certain health warning insofar as I cannot or will not give legal advice on YouTube, simply because I would need to know all of the circumstances, etc., surrounding any particular issue. So if there's anything of a general nature or any questions you have, by all means I'll do my best to answer them. But as I say, there is a health warning and there is a disclaimer there about that, because obviously advice is something that you would only really be given once all of the circumstances and all of the facts and so on are absolutely clear to me, and without the information I can't do that, you know. If you have any questions then fire away there and stick them in the box there. I'll do my best to answer them. And if you haven't, we will have to see what we'll do, but obviously I'm going to answer questions as best I can, but there is, as I say, a health warning. So I hope your Christmas is going well for you, and I hope that you have avoided the dreaded COVID situation. Unfortunately, it's a reality for a lot of us, and it got into our house this year, unfortunately. So it is what it is. We'll have to deal with it as best we can. I'll knock off that and have a look at anything. So there's a question in there. What are the most interesting employment law case decisions you came across in the last month or so? It's hard to know, Andreas. It's hard to know. I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I was involved in one case myself there, involving a chap who was excluded from a car draw in the credit union. Most credit unions will run a car draw, and I was involved in a case, that sort of a case, and we got a good decision in it. But just off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that was particularly unusual. What's your general view on door cameras like Ring and Privacy? Not sure what door cameras you're referring to. I mean, if it's a private dwelling, I suppose somebody's entitled to put a door camera on their dwelling if they want to, and it's up to themselves to safeguard their premises and so on. I don't have any specific, I don't know whether you're getting at any particular issue there. I know people are very exercised about data privacy and GDPR and so on, but sometimes I think we can go completely overboard about it, quite frankly. That's just a personal view. Simon McGrath, how are you, Simon? New planning guidelines for rural house building have been released in January. What way do you think it will go? More lax or stricter? Really haven't a clue, Simon. Speculation. Really don't know. I'm not sure to what extent local authorities then will be able to tweak the rules as well, or to what extent they'll be relying on the local planners, their professional planners that they engage. And I suppose it'll vary very much from county to county. I do know from my own experience that planning permissions and the implementation of planning laws and planning laws, especially planning permissions, are applied differently, quite differently across different county borders, you know. I know you built some houses. Eddie in trouble. I hope you're not in too much trouble there, Eddie, and I hope it's, anyway, I won't say whether it's financial or other trouble, but I know you built some houses. Do you think it's possible to build my own house? I didn't want to take a loan. Do I have to go have an engineer at all steps? Eddie, my man, you can build your own house all right if you have the skills, but if you don't, you're going to have to engage the services of either a building contractor or independent subcontractors, and you're going to have to manage them. Obviously, you're going to have to build it in accordance with the planning permission, and you're going to have to ensure the planning permission is obtained in the first instance. You're also going to have to ensure that it's built in accordance with the building regulations, because if it's not built in accordance with the planning permission, and if it's not built in accordance with the building regulations, then quite frankly you're shooting yourself in the foot. There's no point building a house that departs from the law, as it were, and that's just the reality of it, you know. The Gobi bus driver caught on his mobile phone and unfairly dismissed was an interesting case. Yeah, it may well be. I'm not familiar with that case, to be honest with you. Simon, happy New Year to you too. Look, there's some interesting cases there from time to time, and sometimes people feel very hard done by if they're found to have been engaged in what's considered to be misconduct or gross misconduct or whatever. But if you're employed in a situation of responsibility, like being a bus driver or perhaps working in retail, and money goes astray and you basically are likely to have taken the money or whatever, the bottom line is that whether it's €1 or €1,000 or €100,000 that you rob, there's a fundamental issue of trust and confidence that an employer is entitled to have in the employee, and if it's missing, then that is going to bring an end to the relationship. Likewise with a bus driver, as I say, I don't really know on the particular case, and I don't know what the situation is in relation to the use of mobile phone. I have come across some individuals this year who had issues in relation to the use of mobile phone in the workplace in another transport company. I can't name which one, but again it led to a sanction, a penalty, and the use of mobile phone is something that we all need to be very, very mindful of, and it's getting more difficult, I suppose, to deal with it, you know. Isabel Fleming, Vortec, don't know what that's about. Ministry of Love. Greetings, Terry, from the sunny Canary Islands. Your volume social message retracted. Willie Walsh, hi Terry, do you need planning permission for a septic tank in Meath? You do. You need planning permission for a septic tank, I think, anywhere, because let's face it, the right of a citizen to discharge crap all over the place is something that society has found should be regulated. You mightn't agree with that, other people mightn't agree with that, but quite frankly I don't think it's a bad thing. So yeah, to answer your question, you need planning permission for a septic tank. Ireland, do you foresee any issue with a mortgage drawdown when land is still being transferred into father's name and then site into mine? We have our dealing number. Thank you, Terry, appreciate it. Don't think so, no. The mortgage drawdown is going to be carried out by the solicitor, and the solicitor has to be satisfied, obviously, that the undertaking that he's given to the lender is going to be an undertaking that he can fulfill or she can fulfill. If that's the case, they'll probably be happy enough to go ahead. HM, love the bread videos and the Dublin stories of your Christmas shopping drinks with your wife, promoting self-care without pontificating. Thanks, HM. That was only a sort of a, to be honest with you, a bit of fun, and I only do the bread videos for a bit of fun as well, you know, just for a bit of sometimes I engage in stuff that's quite frankly a bit of an experiment, and I like to test stuff. So, you know, to be doing a YouTube channel and producing videos about law and business and shares and so on, and then to throw in a bread video, I actually just like to do that sometimes to see how YouTube will deal with it and so on, you know. Simon McGrath, he was reinstated in his role, would you believe? The WRC said the cameras are not there to spy on the drivers, basically, and no policy was set in place. Yeah, that's interesting. The use of cameras, and that's something that comes up time and time again, and it came up in the High Court there earlier this year. The use of cameras in the workplace is restricted to the purpose for which they were set up. So I've seen a High Court case where a fellow was fired and he won his case for unfair dismissal, and he went to the High Court and got an injunction, I think, to prevent his dismissal or whatever, because the employer relied on CCTV in circumstances where the employer was using CCTV and the policy was for security reasons, whereas now they were using it in a disciplinary, and the High Court said that was not permissible. So that's obviously what's happened there, Simon, yeah. Mick Daly, well, that 30,000 grant the Irish government talked about to refurb an old house happened in 2022. Haven't a clue, Mick. Don't bother me arse, quite frankly, speculating about what might happen in the future. I do my best to deal with what it is there today, and I think that's certainly the best policy for me. As I say, I don't know what they're going to do in the future. Jack O'Brien, I was looking into property investments overseas, as I don't think Ireland's property market having a good future. How limited are we here in, I'm presuming, capital gains tax? Not sure what you're asking there, Jack. I mean, obviously you can invest overseas if you want to, and the tax situation, I don't know, I suppose capital gains, if they occur on the disposal of an overseas property, you're either going to dispose or take care of that disposal, the gain accruing on that in the foreign jurisdiction or in Ireland. There's probably going to be a double taxation treaty between the two countries, in which case you only have to pay it once, but I don't know what specifically you're asking there. Are tenancy laws any different to from the UK laws? Maybe you could do something on tenancy laws in the future. Richard Thomas. Richard, I don't know what the UK laws are like in terms of tenancies. I do know that the tenancy laws in Ireland to do with residential lettings and so on are fairly strict and fairly harsh, I think, in fairness on landlords, and probably the pendulum has swung from one direction to another, and it's difficult enough, I know, and I have a video coming out shortly about a mature gentleman, in his 60s, I think, who actually served a notice to quit on a tenant 2 years ago and still hasn't got his property back. His back is to the wall. He's in difficulty with his lender and still he hasn't got the property back. And to be honest with you, if you're a tenant and you slap in a complaint to the RTB, Residential Tenancies Board, then you can actually kick the can down the road for a long time. And even the determination from the Residential Tenancies Board, in order to be enforced, you need to go to court to get an order, so that's not ideal, you know. Ministry of Love, greetings Terry from the sunny Canary Islands. Lucky man, your volume of social media output is quite phenomenal. How do you manage this? I work hard and I work every day, but I like what I do, so I don't really consider it to be work. I'm passionate about what I do, and sometimes I do work a lot at it, but I'm very efficient in what I do, and I use a lot of the same content time and time again. I repurpose it, I chunk it up, etc., etc., and I can bang out a video there in 5 or 10 minutes, and I can turn it into five or 10 different pieces of social media content, and I can reuse it in a podcast, etc. And by the way, I've started a podcast, so you might check out the Irish Law and Small Business podcast. You'll get it on Spotify, you'll get it on iTunes, you'll get it on Stitcher. It's going fairly well. I only have it going, well, I've revived it there after a 2-year hiatus, and I'm putting a lot into it at the moment, and I'm going to put a lot into the podcast in 2022, so I hope you might check it out. It's called the Irish Law and Small Business Podcast. As I say, you'll catch it on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, etc. If you're finding anything useful in this video, if you find value in it, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up down below, because it sends a good signal to the YouTube algorithm, and it's all about the algorithms nowadays, isn't it? Jack O'Brien, I was wondering how difficult it might be, in your opinion. How difficult it would be to do what, Jack? To buy a property overseas? There's no problem buying property overseas. Like 10, 15 years ago during the Celtic Tiger, to be honest with you, there was lads from, I know them myself, from Cavan and all over the place, buying apartments in Bulgaria and Slovakia and Prague, Budapest, etc., etc. No problem buying them, no difficulty whatsoever, but things went badly wrong then with the Celtic Tiger situation, and then you've a difficulty in terms of managing property, realising it, different laws, different taxes and so on. So we saw what happened with Eddie Hobbs. Didn't he launch some sort of an investment fund back in the day during the Celtic Tiger day? He was going to invest in, I don't know, America, Europe, wherever, but the whole thing went tits up, so buying abroad is no problem. Question about wills. Stephen T. I'm a dual German-Irish national married to a German national, tax resident in Germany, and have a will in Germany where most of our assets are. We also have 2 buy-to-let properties in Dublin, one we own jointly. Can these be an Irish? I think, Stephen T., you need to have an Irish will to dispose of Irish real estate. So I think in respect of the 2 buy-to-lets, you need an Irish will. That's my view. Simon likes my bread. Thank you, Simon, and it's improved even since that. I've broadened my recipes and so on. Mark Bellew, any tips or advice for starting a small business? I would give you the same tip or advice, Mark, as I've given time and time again. You need to have some concept, some idea, some thing that you do that you can get punters, you can get clients for. People get obsessed about the structure they're going to use. They get obsessed about limited company, sole trader, partnership. They get hung up on taxation. They get hung up on all sorts of things. They need to get punters, get clients, get customers first. And after that then, the money coming in, the turnover and the profits can look after other stuff. Because what can you do with the money? You can get legal advice. You can get accounting advice. You can get taxation advice. If I was starting now, to be honest with you, and I might make a video on this, actually, you might confirm or let me know there in the comments if you'd be interested. I was thinking of doing a video if I was starting now from scratch in business. I started in business when I was 23, but if I was starting now, what would I do? I was thinking of doing a video on that because I have 3 or 4 different ideas, and sometimes I have this fantasy of just leaving the law altogether and starting from scratch with a coffee shop, baking my own bread, making my own sandwiches, which were really, really good back in the day, and doing other stuff, And obviously my activity in social media and so on, I have an ability, I suppose, to generate a crowd, generate base of fans, followers, supporters, whatever you might call them. I think that would be useful as well, and that's something that I could probably turn into a business if I wasn't doing it for myself. So to answer your question, Mark, get some idea, some concept, get a customer, get a client, get a punter, and take it from there. So that's what you need. John Keane, if 2 executors appointed, can one executor say withdraw money from the state without other executor knowing, or would this be classified as fraud? I wouldn't go so far now, John, as to classify it as fraud, but it would be unusual that one executor would be going solo, quite frankly, if 2 executors were involved. It would depend on the particular circumstances. If, for example, one executor, and a lot of legal questions, quite frankly, will come down to the particular circumstances and facts of the situation. For example, if somebody's withdrawn money without the knowledge of the other executor, perhaps to pay for a headstone, or perhaps to pay for the shindig after the funeral, or to pay some other expense or some other outlay that was necessarily incurred in the funeral and so on, that legally and technically it may be incorrect, but it wouldn't necessarily follow that it's fraud. So it will depend on the circumstances. That's all I can say to you. And that's why I'm reluctant enough to be given legal advice, and I don't give legal advice. And to be honest with you, that's why, even though these live streams are very, very popular and get great viewership over a period of time, and I can leave the video up on YouTube, and they gather a lot of likes, a lot of interaction, a lot of comments, and a lot of likes, as I say, and a lot of views over a period of time, and generate clients for me. I've been slow enough to do them, I've been slow enough to do them, and I think the last one I did could have been 6 months ago, or maybe even longer. And the reason for that is I'm always conscious of this thing where people are going to ask me a bloody question. I go and give them an answer to the best of my ability on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, and the next thing is they're suing me for professional negligence because they've gone and acted on the advice or information I've given them, and then they get into difficulty and they want to sue for professional negligence. That's what I'm always careful about, and that's why I'd always insist that a person come into the office, give me full instructions, pay me, and I'll give you advice. Do you know what I mean? So that's where we're at. Why it can be difficult. Now, I may do more live streams later this year or in 2022. In fact, I would appreciate your feedback about that, and maybe leave a comment there or comments to let me know whether you'd be interested in seeing more live streams from me. I was thinking of doing something with more frequency, etc., my own show or my own live stream on a more regular basis. But as I say, I'm always conscious of that situation, you know. Mark Bellew, yes, interested in the video, starting from scratch. We have a business idea, but just want to ensure we don't make any obvious mistakes. The only way you can avoid making mistakes is to avoid doing anything, Mark. So, you know, the only way not to make a mistake is to do nothing. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be a mover and a shaker and a grinder, then you're going to have to sometime put your balls on the line, quite frankly, take a chance and run with it. That doesn't mean that you can't load the dice in your own favour as best you can from the outset. But there will come a point in time when you simply must take your courage in your hands and have a go. Yes, do that video on starting an LTD. Don't know about starting an LTD, Mick. There's no problem starting a limited company. And there, you know, I've already done some videos on starting a limited company. I mean, it's really a tax issue, quite frankly, whether you start a limited company or not, or sole trader or partnership. It's up to yourself, but we'll have a look at it. In Zento AD, my husband and I live in a council house. Is it possible for one of us to help our son to buy a house as joint application? I'm sure it is in Zento, but it depends to what extent you're going to give some help or how you're going to help. For example, if you want to give your son money or a loan or something, or perhaps even guarantee part of a loan, or, you know, then, you know, that's up to yourself, but it will depend on the circumstances. There shouldn't be any difficulty, but obviously you need to inquire. Based on your experience in the retail sector, what would be your overview of the current state of the high street retail sector? I've noticed a huge movement in the last few years, and a friend of mine has got into it there in the last 12 or 18 months as well, towards the likes of coffee. It's incredible, the growth in the coffee game, as it were. And in Enfield, for example, 12 months ago or 15 months ago, maybe 9 months ago, there was no coffee shops on the main street, and now there's actually 3 of them within the space of 150 yards or thereabouts. And it's good to see, it's great to see, but it's incredible, the growth in the coffee market. So I'm not that tuned into retail generally, but I do know the coffee game is very, very hot, has been, and is likely to remain so. So if I was starting off and had just a small few bob, I think I'd probably rent a shop unit someplace, try and get a coffee shop into it, bake my own bread, make my own sandwiches, and really hustle and grind, do really good rolls, do really fresh bread, sourdough bread, good coffee, and I'd make it my business, A, to learn how to bake, which I've done, but B, I'd learn how to do the barista thing and do the coffee good. Do it well, you know. So that's one of the things, or one of the ideas that I'd be interested in having a go at maybe down the line. And I also actually love ice cream, so I think I'd put ice cream into it as well. This is sort of fantasy retail and fantasy start your own business stuff from me. It's easy, I suppose, for me, but I've done a lot of stuff, so, you know, I'm entitled to speculate and fantasize, I think. Hope you can hear me okay, and if you get the if you get any value out of it, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up, because it's a good old signal to the YouTube algorithm. John Brady, what needs to be done to run a water pipe on a right-of-way laneway to a house? What needs to be done to run a water pipe? Don't know, John. I presume you need planning permission, and I presume you would need permission from the person over whose land you are going to run the water pipe. the question of a right of way can be problematic. In other words, there's no problem with having a right of way, but sometimes rights of way which are granted, for example, are granted for specific purposes and to specific people. So there may well be a right of way there, but it may not be a way leave for you to run a water pipe down there. So if I was you, I'd be talking firstly to the local landowner and or whoever's folio is affected by the proposed water pipe, and then I'd be looking at the planning situation. I'd be talking to the architect or engineer to give you a hand or to advise you, or else just go into the local authority, but I don't think it'd be that straightforward. Mick Daly, I'm starting company alone, so can I just register my accountant as the company secretary, so I'm the sole director? You could if you wanted to, but I think you can start a sole director or one director company. So I don't think there's any difficulty there. You could always put somebody down, but your accountant could step in all right as one of the company directors or as a secretary. Please do more live streams. Okay, we'll have a look at that. Whitechapel, well Terry, great channel and watching since you had about 3,000 viewers. One question, what is the longest time you've had to wait for a WRC decision for one of your clients, especially since COVID? Thanks very much, Whitechapel, and I'm glad you're still a subscriber, if you're a subscriber to my channel, since I've had 3,000. I presume you mean 3,000 subscribers. I've over 14,000 now, which I'm very happy with. But I'm hoping to blow it up this year even more, and I'm probably going to do more videos. But in terms of the WRC decisions, yeah, some of them can take absolutely ages, quite frankly. And I don't know what happens. It might depend on the particular adjudicator. It might depend on their way of operating. It might depend on their caseload, although I presume caseloads are managed between adjudicators in a fair way and so on. But it really depends. To be honest with you, I think I've been waiting 12 months for a WRC decision, you know. Just off the top of my head, but it can be very erratic, and I've seen some coming out very, very quickly. I've seen some coming out like within 3 or 6 weeks or whatever, you know. What are your thoughts on in-camera rule? Should it be removed? Jeffrey Horn. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Jeffrey. I presume in family law. I don't have any particular view on it. I don't see any difficulty with the in-camera rule. I do think that there is certain situations, certain circumstances, certain areas of law where the in-camera rule should be enforced, should be in play. There's absolutely no reason why the whole parish, the whole neighbourhood could be in at a court hearing where we're talking about the breakdown of a relationship or a marriage involving small kids. Can't see any sense in that. So for that reason, the in-camera rule is brought in to give parties in a family law situation some privacy and some protection, and I think that's a good thing. I can't see any problem with that, quite frankly. Piyush Prakash, how much mortgage can I get for second house? First home mortgage isn't fully paid. Thanks, Terry. How much mortgage? Piyush, my good man, I haven't a bull's how much mortgage you can get for a second house. I don't know how much your first house is worth. I don't know how much equity you have. I don't know how much money you're earning. Are you earning 25 grand a year? Are you earning 250 grand a year? Like, these are facts and these are circumstances that will feed into a bank's willingness to give you money. So there's no point asking me how much you're going to get. Go and ask the bank. But you need, obviously your circumstances and your income and so on are going to be critical. Anthony Kenny, hi Terry, cost to transfer property after a will. It depends, Anthony. It would depend. It would depend on who I was transferring it to and from. Obviously, the transferring it out of the estate, I suppose, perhaps to one person. If I was doing the probate application and so on, I'd probably be given, would be given a discount. If I wasn't doing the probate application and you're doing it yourself, then it would depend, and it would depend on the value of the house as well. So I can't give you a simple, straightforward answer. And in terms of a transfer, it'll depend on the value of the house, and it'll depend on how much is being exchanged. If that's the case, maybe it's not. Frank Trapp, how are you, Frank? How's it going? Great channel. Do you foresee any problems or challenges with the new procedure for WRC hearings in 2022? I do, Frank. I actually anticipate a lot of challenges, and I anticipate a lot of disputes and rows. I know the thing says 15 days, but the adjudicator has discretion, and clearly if the adjudicator exercises discretion and decides not to allow me submit stuff with 7 days to go, I've missed the 15-day deadline, then what am I going to do if I get an unsuccessful result? I'm probably going to go to the Labour Court, or I might even go, to the High Court or someplace and say that I'm being treated unfairly, or the law is being applied arbitrarily or in a sort of a capricious fashion. It's hard to know, but yeah, I can see disputes. No two ways about it. And I mean, a person that's coming into the WRC doing their own case for the first time, and perhaps not even knowing about the 15-day thing, or knowing about it but not being able to get their stuff together, I can't see them being thrown out, and so I can see rows, I can see disputes, alright, no two ways about it. Shahan Nasir, quick question. With Brexit in UK, I have finished my LLB and LPC in UK, but hoping to move to Ireland next year. Can start a career in law in Ireland. You can, Shahan, yeah, but you need to check with the Law Society of Ireland, or the Bar Council, I think it's called, or the Law Library Bar Council. There is, I think, a conversion course or conversion courses. I know there is one for solicitors. There's probably one for barristers. You can probably transfer over. The two systems will be very similar. I don't think it would be a huge culture shock for you to be transferring over to Ireland, but you will have to go through some sort of a process, I think, and you will have to perhaps do some sort of a conversion course or conversion exam. But I think it would be possible, all right, and the two systems are very, very closely aligned, I believe. Rachel Moore, do you have any knowledge on music law and how to best protect original music and songs? How should one proceed if their music is stolen? Rachel, you don't need, with all due respect, much knowledge on music law to advise you or tell you the situation there. If your music or songs is stolen, then you have copyright, intellectual property, but you must pursue the person who stole the intellectual property, the music from you. You must try to enforce your rights. You have rights under copyright law and so on. You'll have to send a cease and desist letter first from a solicitor to the person who took your songs or stole your songs, and you must pursue them then in the usual way. You sue them basically for damages. So, that's essentially it. You've copyright. The person who makes music, who makes a song, who makes a painting, who writes a book, they own the copyright in it, and it's up to them, unfortunately, though, to pursue it and to enforce that right. So hope that answers your question there, Rachel, and if it does or did, you might give it the old thumbs up down below. And anybody else that's out there, I'd appreciate if you give it a thumbs up, because, as I say, it sends a good old signal to YouTube. Conor Richardson, I paid the outstanding LPT balance of a property at my local post office. LPT have received the funds but are not allocating it against the relevant years. I need this allocation for the sale of the house. You may take that up, Conor, with revenue. There's probably some reason, but I'm not sure. But there may well be a reason why they're not allocating it against the relevant years. But you really need to take that up with revenue. LPT, generally there's no issues with it, but revenue look after it, and the purchaser, if you're selling your property, will be looking for an undertaking from your solicitor about LPT, and that the outstanding amount, if there's anything outstanding, I'm not suggesting that there is, will be paid, and they'll be getting a clean bill of health. That's what I'd be doing anyway, no two ways about it. I'd be looking for an undertaking. Whitechapel, good man Terry, thanks for that, keep it up. The legal and shares related content are great, thanks a lot. Frank Trapp, have you read the Workplace Relations Commission report? If so, any thoughts? I found it quite interesting that over 50% self-represented themselves. Yes, Frank, I've done a video on that actually just this morning. I haven't published it yet, I don't think, but I've done a video on it. I've read the report. It's interesting. I wrote a blog post about it last week. Yeah, it's interesting, and I saw one of the cases there. One standout award was €19 for some person who won their case. and I observed as well, or noticed, that most cases are actually brought under the Organisation of Working Time Act. I noticed as well that the average award, I think, is 11 grand, and the highest was 190 grand or something, and the lowest was 19 euros. It's an interesting report. It covers, I think, 1,400 decisions. It covers 3,500 individual claims, and yeah, I mean, I see the success rate then, I think, was around about 42 or 43%. If you're interested in employment law, and I know you are, you've obviously read that report, it's worth a review or a read. And I've written a blog post about it, and on my website, employmentrightsireland.com, you can find the link to the report itself. It's worth having a look at. Ireland, the land registry is very slow, Terry. Our application went in last March. Land being transferred from 1886, nightmare, number of cards management. The land registry can be slow. It depends on the situation. I don't know whether you are the solicitor or not, but your solicitor may have got a query or queries. It does happen. Some queries can come back, and quite frankly, you'd wonder what the hell are they on about here. But they raise queries. They're entitled to do that. And obviously the COVID situation has slowed things down to an extent, to a great extent too, you know. But yeah, they can be slow. Rachel and Mick and Eddie, Connor, thanks a lot. Thank you for your questions and your comments. And if you find the information useful, I'd appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below. Revenue are being very slow in responding to my inquiries about written and oral. Yeah, well, look, they can be, and that's it. You're up against City Hall, but Revenue administer that system, so you need to deal with them, and you need to make nice with them, quite frankly. Generally, there's some battles you can win, and there's some battles you can't win, and taking on Revenue is not a battle I'd be taking on too quickly, you know. I want to emphasise again that the information that I'm giving out now on this live stream is information for educational, entertainment purposes. It's information, but it's not legal advice. And I have to reiterate that, and that's why I've been slow enough to repeat the number of live streams I've done. I may do more live streams in 2022. I may well do more live streams in 2022, but one of the things that was holding me back, quite frankly, was this idea of somebody coming in with a question, and you give advice to the best of your ability, not advice, information. You answer the question. What can you do when you're doing a bloody live stream and you're encouraging people to ask questions? You're going to answer the question. But people don't realise that if you hold yourself out as a solicitor and you give advice to somebody, even though you don't get paid, it's possible that they could sue you for professional negligence, because they are entitled to a certain standard of advice and so on. So even though I mightn't be getting paid, I'm still leaving myself open to getting sued for professional negligence, and that's something you'd always be careful about. I mean, obviously, if you're going to get sued for professional negligence, and it's something that you would be always concerned about, then at the very least, wouldn't you be inclined to charge in the first instance for your time and your work and your expertise? So that's why oh, just missed Corrigan 71. You didn't miss anything. Mick Daly, if buying investment properties in Ireland for cash flow, is it better to buy personally or through a business for both tax and liability reasons? It'll depend very much, Mick, on your personal circumstances. It'll depend on your other sources of income. It'll depend on your taxation situation. It'll depend on your normal tax liability. That is not a legal question, quite frankly. It's a tax question. You need to speak to an accountant or a tax person, a tax advisor, a tax consultant about that. It's an important question, but it is one that comes up all the time, and it really will depend on your personal financial circumstances. Gary Ferry, how are you? Have you knowledge of the new procedure that was introduced in November, whereby if you have a PI case and the defence failed to deliver their defence, is this good for, let's say, a plaintiff? I'm not sure, Gary, what you're referring to there, but the bottom line is, if you have a PI case and the defence failed to deliver their defence, then you, the plaintiff solicitor, can always seek judgment in default of defence. That's not new. That is the situation since time immemorial, and that's still the situation. But you would have to serve notice first, then you look for judgment in default of defence by issuing a notice of motion and a grounding affidavit, and you're looking for judgment then in default, and you have to serve it obviously on the other side. You can't sneak up on them. Have you ever done any social welfare appeals to the Social Welfare Appeals Office? I haven't, Frank, no, and it's not something that I would intend doing. There's certain things that I am happy to do. There's certain things that I will avoid doing, and that strikes me. I don't know much about it now, but it strikes me as one of the things that would fall into the category of I think I'd prefer to avoid it, Sometimes it's like playing cards. You walk into a card game and you're looking around and you're trying to figure out who the patsy is, and if you can't figure out who the patsy is, then it could well be you. So you always, when you're taking on any piece of law, any piece of business, you're always looking to get paid, quite frankly. You're wondering how you're getting paid. I know it's all very well talking about justice and rights and so on and so forth, and that's good, and there is some cases that I'm exercised by from purely from the perspective of justice and fairness and inequity, and a sense that that's not right. She was badly treated, or he was badly treated. I have a few of those cases, but by and large I must admit that the vast majority of the cases that I take on, because I'm running a business, because I have a wife and kids, because I have a mortgage, because I have kids in college and so on and so forth, have obligations, they must pay their way. And the likes of that, and the likes of, quite frankly, residential tenancy board situations where the tenant is behind with rent and so on, they're sort of cases that I'd be kind of avoiding, to be honest with you. I just wouldn't be mad about them, Is a blind trust only for the rich and the kids? Any benefits for a PAYE workers' family? I'm not sure what a blind trust is, DEC-P, to be honest with you. A bare trust, I know what a bare trust is. I'm not sure what a blind trust is, so I'm not going to speculate. Billy Flanagan, I want to buy land in Newmarket. I was told I could not put a small log cabin on it. It seems like there's a lot of corruption in Ireland, from buying a home to the vaccine mandate. I really don't know what you're talking about there, Billy, to be honest with you. I thought you were going back to Florida. You left a comment there on YouTube the other day saying you were going back to Florida, that Ireland was corrupt. So obviously you have your own view. You're talking about a vaccine mandate, but there's no mandate of vaccines. People can choose to get a vaccine or not choose to get a vaccine. But thankfully, we have planning laws, and buying land in Newmarket and putting a log cabin on it without planning permission, if it's outside the law, it's outside the law. And I think even you'll find that there's planning restrictions and so on, building restrictions in the United States as well. But there's no vaccine mandate either, Billy. So, you don't have to get a vaccine if you don't want to get a vaccine. It's entirely a personal choice. Sam David, hi Terry, any recommendations on the best capital gains tax software programs for computers? Jesus, Sam, I haven't a clue about capital gains tax software programs for computers. Don't know that, no. I do know the capital gains tax calculation is relatively straightforward if it wasn't in relation to the disposal of shares. If it is, that's a different ballgame. So no, I don't. I'm not an accountant. I do invest, but I'm not an accountant. Kevin O'Higgins, Terry, what is your favourite colour? I think it is yellow. Corrigan 71, if a court date is missed based on a change of address, can penalty points be given in absence be appealed? They probably can, Corrigan 71, but I'll have to give you a bit of a health warning there. I'm not, I don't do road traffic anymore. I don't do criminal law anymore. Generally in the Irish law, though, you can appeal pretty much anything. But clearly, there may well be a time within which you must appeal, and beyond that it may not be possible to appeal. So it really will depend on the circumstances, and it really will depend on the on the circumstances, on the facts, and how late you are, and so on and so forth, Andrea Sartori, can you do adverse possession applications? I've been here 12 years. Yes, I can do adverse possession applications, and I have done a couple. It will depend on the circumstances and so on. People don't understand what they need to do to prove or to be registered as owner in an adverse possession situation. There's a good bit of information on my website, businessandlegal.ie, about adverse possession, and there is a good bit. I have a video there, or videos on YouTube as well, about adverse possession, so you should have a look at that and see, do you qualify. But we do the applications all right. They go into the land registry, and obviously they're based on affidavits and long usage and so on. So if you're getting any value out of this live stream now, I would appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below. As I say, it gives a good old signal to YouTube, and it gives me good encouragement as well. Billy Flanagan, thanks Terry. I was in Mallow and I was told I could not eat in a restaurant without taking the jab. Yeah, well, that's your choice, Billy. If you want to eat in the restaurant, you have to be jabbed, because the regulations are that certainly, I'm not sure about restaurants, but I know pubs and so on and so forth, aren't they checking for the COVID vaccination? So it's up to yourself. You don't have to get the jab, but clearly you don't have to get to eat in the restaurant either. So that's unfortunately the situation. Any book reading recommendations for the new year? Sam David. There's one book now I'm looking to buy in the next 3 or 4 hours. I think it's called Hyperfocus, and it's one I'm interested in. I'm going to buy that one. I'm finishing off a book there at the moment, a bullshit novel, quite frankly, legal-based novel, etc. But I'm looking at that Hyperfocus one. It looks interesting. It's got good reviews, and it's basically telling you how to do twice as much work in half the time. So anything like that, I'm all over. I like that sort of stuff, because I like to work as efficiently as possible and effectively as possible. But efficiently, somebody was asking me earlier on there about my social media output and activity and so on, but I do it in a very, very efficient way, and I kind of have a system. I have spreadsheets, and I work very, very much to a system. A panel live stream with yourself, an accountant, a planning expert, etc. would be great. Would really round out the chat. I would build profile of all speakers. Questions could be fielded by expertise. That may well be the case, HM, but I'm not really too concerned now about building the profile of all speakers. I'm only, as you can understand, interested in building my profile. I will serve my audience as best I can, and I will from time to time interview people whose interviews would be of interest and benefit to my audience. That's what I'll do. But a panel live stream is hard enough, to be honest with you, to organise one interview without getting a panel involved. But I've interviewed a mortgage broker there earlier this year, Miss Mortgages from Instagram, Emer Shannon, and that was very popular. I'm probably this year in 2022 going to interview somebody about the BER certs and that sort of crack. I'm going to interview a surveyor as well, and I may interview somebody else, but I think a surveyor would be useful. Rachel Moore, for a small business, is it necessary to get subcontractors' contracts signed, proofread, etc. by a solicitor? For a small business. It's not, Rachel. It's up to yourself. But I mean, you have to exercise discretion. If things go wrong and there's a dispute, would you like to have it read beforehand in advance? Or would you like then to discover that there is some appalling condition in the contract that is going to prevent you from getting any redress in your dispute with the subcontractor? It's entirely up to yourself. So, no, you don't have to. But whether it's a good idea or not is a different question, Conor Richardson, would a successful business trading for 2 years be likely to gain approval for an unsecured commercial loan? It really will depend, Conor. Banks are much maligned, much criticised, but banking is a simple business. Banks will make money by lending you money. Banks are concerned, therefore, about the interest that they're going to get on that, but they're also interested in the getting the money back. So all the bank is going to do is take a cold hard look at you, Conor Richardson, your business, your 2 years trading, etc., and see how likely it is they're going to get the money back. What happens if it doesn't work out? What happens if the crap hits the crapola? In those circumstances, will they get their money back? Is there security, etc.? That's what the bank is concerned about. It's just business. It's nothing to do with you so much. It's more to do with your business, and that's, like, people can be giving out and criticising banks and so on and so forth. But I mean, they're a necessary evil. We need the money. We need banks rather, and let's face it, they have the money. So sometimes you need to just. Billy Flanagan, I meant to say I wanted to buy land in Newmarket until I realised there was too much corruption, so we ran back to Florida where you can buy land and build a home without any corruption. Thanks. That's great. I'm delighted, Billy, that Florida is completely and utterly devoid of corruption. As I say, if you find this useful and helpful, I'd appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up down below. I have another few minutes now, and I'm going to go and watch the racing from Leopardstown. I like the old racing at Leopardstown. They're good racing at Christmas time, and it's just a shame to see it being run with devoid of crowds and with no empty grandstands and so on. It's a pity, but that's the way it is. So for another 10 minutes or so, I'll take a few more questions, and I'll do my best to answer the questions. Again, I reiterate what I'm saying today. The information I'm giving you, the questions I'm answering, is not legal advice. It's information. You do need to go to a solicitor if you have a legal issue, and you need to open up the kimono, as it were, give them all the facts, give them all the circumstances, and then you can get legal advice that you can rely on. Well, sometimes you can rely on it, let's face it. Declan McKeown, for all the time you dedicate to social media, does it pay you, and how? Is it mainly through new business generated? What percentage of new business would come from social media? I don't know what percentage, Declan, but I wouldn't be doing it, to be honest with you, if it wasn't tremendously effective and cost effective and efficient. I get a huge amount of clients from social media, employment clients, property conveyancing, clients from all over the world, America, Europe, buying property in Ireland, and then I get, a huge amount of small business stuff. I get a huge amount of employment stuff. So yeah, it's worth me while. I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. It would be irrational to be doing it if it didn't pay, I mean, the reason I do it is for the business. I don't have to do the old boys club. I don't have to go to Chamber of Commerce meetings. I don't have to do, go to golf clubs or rugby clubs and kiss ass, quite frankly. I can hustle and grind and get my own clients off social media, off the internet, because nowadays there's no gatekeepers. There used to be gatekeepers. You used to need permission. Now you don't need permission. And that's the great thing about social media. It's a real equalizer, and any fella like me, any girl like me with a mobile phone can easily generate clients if they have a bit about them, as Eamon Dunphy might say. CJYT. Received notification of High Court case date, possibly an early settlement. Would it be advisable to push it through? I believe my case is bulletproof. You'd want to be talking CJYT to your solicitor about your case being bulletproof. A lot of cases, people think they're bulletproof, but they may not be. And you may well have a bulletproof case that is useless to you insofar as you get a judgment, you win, and you can't give it legal effect or practical effect. In other words, you can't collect the money. So it depends on the circumstances. I can't give you information or advice about that particular situation because it will depend on the facts, and you should speak to your solicitor. Ministry of Love. I have a small little business on the side in terms of consultancy training. I'm not getting the sales as much as I would like. What's a rough estimate of your fee to advise? I charge a consultation fee of 100 quid. Frank Trapp, any tips on horse races? Winners only, of course. No tips today, Frank. The best tip I can give you in relation to horse racing is never tie your lace in a revolving door. Blake Banham, how did you find the transition into law and how long did it take you? It didn't take me too long insofar as I went back to study law. I think it was 42 or 43. Studied hard for 8 weeks, thereabouts, passed the FE1s, got an apprenticeship, and qualified after a couple of years. I think it took me about 2 years to qualify, or whatever it was, the period of the apprenticeship. I've liked it, or I've loved it, and I didn't find it difficult, but I suppose it'll depend on your own outlook, on your own attitude and so on, but I'm happy enough. Shahan Nasir, what the COVID situation in Ireland at the moment? Our businesses, offices open. How do you see things going over the next few months? We're having a difficulty at the moment with this Omicron transmissibility and massive ballooning, quite frankly, in the number of new cases, etc. We're probably no different to anybody else. The UK obviously have their own difficulties with COVID-19 and Omicron, and the 3 jurisdictions I see in the UK have 3 completely different ways of operating. England and Wales and Scotland are operating completely different. So we will see changes. There is shops open and so on and so forth, but anyway, Paul Carroll, what happens when an employer ignores WRC? It'll already past legal fine stage. Where will it end up? Still no employment rights. Paul Carroll, that is not true at all. What happens is, if you have a proper decision that's justiciable and enforceable, you go to the district court, you get a court order, and then you pursue it against the company or against the employer in that way. That's what you do. And ultimately, there's a company involved. If it's an employer as a limited company, you could wind them up. Or if it's an individual, you could pursue them for a judgment, get a judgment registered against them, and pursue them in a debt collection method. But that's what you have to do, and that's it. The WRC gives you a decision, but you do need to go to the district court in order to get an enforceability or an enforcement order. Flooring Porter is my brother-in-law's horse, one to watch. Well, there you go. CJYT is giving us a tip for Flooring Porter. So what race is that in, I wonder? Anyway, we'll keep an eye out for that one now. Ministry of Love, heading to the beach now to ponder your golden words of wisdom. Good stuff. Have a good time in the beach, you lucky man. The people in Ireland need to stand against the government and having to take an experimental jab that has proven not to work. That is complete and utter bullshit, quite frankly, Billy. Nonsense. JL, is the defendant's ignoring of pre-action protocol enough to avoid paying costs if claimant discontinues early on? Is the defendant's ignoring of pre-action protocol enough to avoid paying costs? It really depends, JL, on the situation. It'll depend on the judge. It'll depend on the actual, to what extent they ignored the various processes and procedures and so on. Obviously, costs follow the event, so that's all I can say without knowing there's an area in Ireland that has the highest vaccinated and highest number of people with COVID. Thanks, Terry. That's bullshit, quite frankly. Paul Carroll, thanks. Okay, lads, thanks for showing up. Yes, that. Okay, we have another couple of minutes. I'll take 1 or 2 more questions. I have 2 more minutes left, and then I'm off to watch the races in Leopardstown. I hope you found this thing useful. Give it a thumbs up if you do, and make sure to mask up, take precautions, get the jab, get the vaccine. Vaccinations are great. Annie Rua, Terry, there should be thousands on this live stream, but that's life. Exactly, there should be, but shit happens. A panel with Billy and yourself would sell out. Who's Billy? James John, I'd stick to business, Billy. Touchy subject. Who's Billy? Oh yeah, Jesus, Billy. I'm sure you're referring to Billy Flanagan, our gentleman who's telling us about the COVID vaccination being some sort of an experiment, even though Billy, I can bet a pound to a penny to a pound of shit that Billy has absolutely no medical or pharmacological qualifications whatsoever. I don't either, but I will listen to the public health advice. I will listen to the people who do know, and that's the way it works generally. Do you know a good commercial lawyer that can do mutual NDAs and commercial contracts for engineering applications? Mick, I don't. Very useful, James Duran. Thank you, James. Since finding your website a few years ago, Employment Rights Ireland, you have been a great source of great wisdom. You're a great, practical, smart solicitor. Thank you very much. Glad you enjoy it. Is it better to operate business in America where it's less regulated, or better here where there's more safety nets in case of failure? PC, it's up to yourself where you choose to operate. It really is up to yourself. I mean, I've seen people failing here, and I've seen people failing in America. People have a fair old degree of protection here, all right, but it's entirely up to yourself. I mean, clearly you're not going to go to America and set up a business on the basis that if you fail or go tits up, you're better off there or better off here or whatever. Your own personal circumstances, etc., are important, you know. Okay, look, thanks for showing up, lads, today. That's an hour up there now. Let me know in the comments as well, if you don't mind, if you would be interested in seeing more live streams. I may do more in 2022, but I'd be interested in seeing what your views are. Thanks for showing up today. Thanks for your questions. Remember, it's not legal advice, it's entertainment, it's information, it's education, it's whatever. And give it a thumbs up down below if you found it useful. Thanks a lot. Okay, we're gone. Column Malone, any news in law changing regarding neighbour problem trees? Don't know anything about that column, to be honest with you. You'll always have noisy neighbours and trees giving problems. Frank Trapp, love the content, great blogs, great website. Thanks, Terry, love reading the stuff you post, always learn something new. Good stuff. Okay, lads, thanks a lot, and thanks for your support, okay? And happy and healthy 2022.